This is how many homes we need to bring into the community. This is how many homes we have land use decisions for. We have built, we're supposed to do that population growth, we are supposed to be building 200 to 250 new housing units per year. And we used to do that. So back in the early 2000s, we were building about 300 housing units per year.
My name is Diane Longacre, and I am a fairly new board member with the McMinnville City Club. I have been asked to MC today as Aussie is on vacation this week. Lucky him. He did want to send his apologies, and can everyone hear me okay? Yeah? Okay. Did want to send his apologies for the late change to today's program. Due to some miscommunications, one of today's scheduled presenters, Jim Johnson, was not able to make it. However, Kyle, stay right where you are. However, we are pleased that Planning Director Heather Richards for what is sure to be an insightful and engaging presentation and discussion. Right? Heather's like, yes! Woo-woo! Right. Before we get to that, I'd like to thank the businesses and individuals who help make these programs possible. Our 2019-20 gold sponsors are Cellar Ridge Construction, J.L. Kiff Vineyard, Chemeketa Community College, Columbia Bank, City of McMinnville, McMinnville Area Chamber of Commerce, On Point Community Credit Union, First Federal Savings and Loan, and Gormley Plumbing and Mechanical. Whoop, whoop. Our silver sponsors are First American Title Insurance, Payne West Insurance, and the News Register. And our cultural trust partners are Stephen Rupp, Philip and Phoebe Newman, and Dan and Mary Corrigan. Can we give them all a round of applause? We are in the heart of our season with some great programs coming up. Next month, February 11th, so everybody save the date, February 11th, we will have author Bill Sullivan return with his program, Ghost Answers to Rajneeshis, Colts in Oregon. On March 10th, we will have Portland-based auto journalist Edward Niedermeyer presenting from his new book, Ludicrous, the Unvarnished Story of Tesla Motors. Our April date is still open, and we will be announcing that one next month. On May 12th, we will have Utah State professor and former News Register reporter, Matthew LaPlante. I should know this, right? Diane, you should have rehearsed the script. That's right. Discussing research from his fascinating book, Superlative, The Biology of Extremes. And we will close out our season June 9th with David Harrelson of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde with a presentation titled Indigenous Peoples and Practices of the Greater Yamhill Watershed. But today, our afternoon is here at home, considering land growth and development and how policies surrounding those three things will shape the future of McMinnville. Heather Richards became the McMinnville Planning Director in 2016. Previously, she was the Community Development Director in Redmond, and before that, the Project Development Coordinator in Nampa, Idaho, which is right next to where my daughter lives. Yay! Great place. A native of Amherst, Massachusetts, she graduated from Columbia University in 1988, double majoring in history and art. Since arriving to McMinnville, she has helped initiate several long-term planning initiatives, overseeing projects including great neighborhoods, housing strategies, urban renewal, and ongoing attempts to increase the urban growth boundary. Without further ado, please welcome Heather Richards.
So, good afternoon. As Diane said, we originally set this up as a counterpoint between myself and Jim Johnson, who is an agricultural land use planner. And yesterday at 2, I learned that it's just counterpoint. So what I tried to do is sort of tone down the counterpoint and really focus on information and data for you. And then there's a lot of information to get through. I want to be able to get through it so that there's time for questions and answers period as well. So anyways, this is about land use growth and development Oregon style. Oregon has a very unique planning program that's a statewide program. But I always like to tell people, when you're planning for growth, in my opinion, first and foremost, you are planning for growth is all about planning for people. We forget about that when we focus on the data and the wonky stuff. Planning for people in terms of how they will live and how they will work in the future. So future generations, we are really planning for, and I keep this in mind, I've been doing this for 25 years and this has always been my motivation, my children, their children, and their children. We are really planning for generations in front of us. When we build something, it lasts for about 100 years. And so we are really thinking about how people in the future are going to enjoy this community. In Oregon, we are planning for growth because it's required by state law. We have to plan for growth. It's not a choice, but it's for good reasons. Great communities don't happen by chance. It's very thoughtful and it's very intentional about how they move forward. In Oregon, we have a large set of regulations in which we have to work in terms of planning for growth. We have state law, we have administrative rules, and then we have local regulations as well. So there is a laundry list of framework and decision-making filters in which we have to work when we're doing planning here in Oregon. But planning is really about balance. It's about balancing priorities, it's about balancing agendas, it's about balancing near-term needs and long-term opportunities, and it's about balancing aspirational goals and cautiousness. And when it's out of balance, it's unfairly weighted in one direction, and the results are inequitable. And here's my counterpoint. This is where many believe we are at in Oregon today, that our Oregon land use system is out of balance in terms of the decision-making filter, and that McMinnville is the poster child for that imbalance. So I'm going to share with you the story of McMinnville, what's been occurring here, and what we're looking at next. But we are being watched by state agencies, by land use groups, by advocates. All around the state, people are looking at McMinnville in terms of how we get through this process, because we truly are right now the litmus test as to whether the Oregon land use system still works or does not work. So by law, cities must plan for 20 years of population growth. That's what the state tells us. We have to plan for that. McMinnville has been trying to plan for 20 years of population growth for the last 33 years. We have been at work for 33 years trying to plan for 20 years of population growth, and it has been unsuccessful. That is why we're the poster child. We're supposed to, by state law, have 5 years of buildable land supply in our city limits. I can tell you right now, we have one 20-acre parcel left in our city limits to build upon, and the rest are 2 acres and 1 acre. We are supposed to have in our 20-year land supply in our urban growth boundary. So our urban growth boundary is supposed to have 20 years worth of land supply in it, and that includes the city limits as well. And then we also have the opportunity to plan for 50 years if we choose to do so, and that's called an urban reserve area. And in the planning process for those 5, 20, and 50 years, we have to have plans about how we're going to support development. So we do infrastructure planning, transportation, wastewater, water, parks, housing, employment. Those are all things we have to do by state law, and then you can bring some additional local values into that if you choose to as a community. It's a very complex and it's a very rigorous process. This is actually the easy piece of the flow chart. But essentially what we're doing is we're doing a lot of data analysis and evaluation to say what is the housing needs that we have to be able to support 20 years of population growth moving forward. What's the employment needs we need for those people to work and earn income? And then do we have enough land to be able to serve that? And if we don't have enough land, how are we going to bring more land into the land supply? The population numbers come to us from the state. So the state says, you, McMinnville, need to plan for this many new people in your community over the next 20 years and 50 years. We don't make that choice, they make that choice for us. Years and years of land use planning in Oregon, this started in 1973, this process. Cities spent a lot of time in the court system battling over what that population forecast was. And so the state recently in the last 5 years said, we're no longer going to battle over that. We will tell you, you do the other work. So the McMinnville UGB history, I told you we've been doing it for 33 years. We did our first urban growth boundary with a plan for serving our community from 1980 to 2000. And that was successfully adopted. And then ever since then, we've been working on the next planning horizon, and we haven't been successful getting that through the system. We started that work in 1993, and we're still working on it. We have spent thousands of hours on this effort. We've spent years in the court system on this effort, and we have spent about $1 million on this effort. And yet we haven't been able to actually realize success in terms of land supply. So now in McMinnville, I shared with you that we have 20 acres. A 20-acre parcel is our largest parcel in McMinnville that doesn't have a land use decision on it for new development in our city limits. Our home builders right now, the large local home builders that you're aware of, Rudin and the Zumwalts and other local home builders, they are all building out their last parcel of land they have to build on. So they're building their last subdivisions. There is nothing else in the pipeline. So we have very constrained land supply. They've been looking for land. Developers are going around and knocking on doors right now. They are looking for land to build on, and we don't have it. We just recently did a map to assess what type of buildable land is still left in the city. So because the land supply is constrained, we have much higher land cost in McMinnville. A 7,000 square foot lot today, that's without a home built on it, is selling anywhere between $125,000 and $140,000. There used to be a time when that was what people paid for their home. This is for a bare lot of land that's smaller than the typical lot of land that McMinnville has enjoyed in the past. We have a lack of affordable housing opportunities. We have not built a new subsidized housing project in McMinnville for about 13 years. The state has just released $325 million of funds to help communities build subsidized housing in their community for affordable housing. This is additional money outside of their regular programs. They want to spend it in the next 2 years. They've been to McMinnville 4 times. We've invited them here 4 times over the last 2 years to talk about this. We knew the money was coming out, we wanted to talk about it. They want to fund something here. We literally can't find one piece of land to build a project on. So they have moved on. We will not be accessing those funds. We have a lack of overall housing opportunities. I'll share with you as we go through this that our housing supply is in deficit, and because of that, right now we are seeing homes being built for higher income families and households, and we're displacing our middle income and lower income families. We have an increasing homeless population. We have less economic opportunities. We have less projects coming in, growing jobs. Our existing businesses are growing and they're doing very well, but we don't have new businesses coming in because they are struggling to find land to build on. We have a falsely constrained population growth. So in Oregon, we calculate population growth based on past trends. As we continue to struggle to grow, we have a falsely constrained population growth with those trends. We have more population growth happening in the unincorporated county, the rural area of Yamhill County, which equates to sprawl, the antithesis of what the Oregon land use system is all about. More population growth is happening there than the largest city in this county, McMinnville. We have a deficit in tax revenue to fund our public level of service. Not new level of service, but existing level of service. We are approving infill in a vacuum. We are looking at every quirky parcel out there and trying to figure out how to make something work. And sometimes it nestles in nicely, and other times it does not. There is a pressure to efficiently use the land without long-term consideration. So there's a pressure to build as many housing units as possible on a piece of land and not take into context things that we need in terms of public amenities so that there's long-term great quality of life in those neighborhoods, parks and things of that nature. And then we also have a paralysis to move forward. We've been doing this for 33 years, and there's a lot of people who are just like, I am defeated, done, can we just move on at this point in time? So is the Oregon land use system working? Some would say yes, and some would say no. If you're concerned about protecting farm and forest land, then Oregon's metrics seem to be doing well. we are protecting farm and forest land. If you are concerned about accommodating growth for future generations and maintaining livability for all Oregon residents, Oregon's metrics are not doing well and are declining rapidly. So in my industry, the planning industry, you heard a little bit about me. I grew up on the East Coast. I got my graduate degree in Michigan and did planning there, and then came to Oregon, and I've been a planner in Oregon for 25 years. In my industry, people often talk about how Oregon has the greatest land use system. We also talk about the fact that no other state has replicated our system. The intent is great. So urban growth boundaries and protecting farm and forest land is great intention. However, the practice in terms of how we do it, many people see that as failing because we no longer have the balance. So, as I go through a counterpoint as a city planner, I've heard in McMinnville that I'm from a city and so I don't understand the need for protecting farm and forest land. So I want to share a little bit more about myself. I did grow up in Amherst, Massachusetts. My father bought a small parcel of land from Atkins Farms, which is a huge apple orchard, and I grew up surrounded by apple orchards and pear orchards. I loved it. I grew up in the Connecticut River Valley, which many say actually is competitive for the Willamette Valley for the best farmland in the United States. They have been farming there for 350 years, since 1650, and they have preserved those farms. When I was in Amherst, Massachusetts, I had the opportunity as a high school student to work with Randall Arendt. If anybody knows anything about the planning industry, he's kind of our mentor and guru for conservation land use planning and rural by design. And working with him, I had the opportunity to work on his first work, which was a design manual for conservation and development in the Connecticut River Valley. So it's all about how to accommodate new growth in a place where you want to preserve farmland. And then I've been a planner since 1995. So why do I love what I do? I love what I do because of the people, because of the way we can all work together to talk about how we plan for our future community. The people are what's important to me, but I feel like we're failing our future generations right now. And I think we're failing our future generations because we've become entrenched in this battle of selective ideology. We're focused now on what our ideology rather than thinking about the people in the future and how we serve them. And so what do I mean by that is, in Oregon we have 14 land use goals, and you have a sheet of paper on your table that describes what those 14 goals are. They are all supposed to be equal in priority. We have goals that talk about preserving agricultural lands, that's goal number 3. We have goals that talk about conservation of forest lands, that's goal number 4. Our number 1 goal is citizen involvement. We also have goals that talk about parkland, public facility land, that's goal number 8. We call that recreational needs. We have a goal that talks about economic development. You need to be able to provide economic development and jobs for people, that's goal number 9. Goal number 10 is all about housing. We need to provide housing for future generations, and so on and so on. And then goal number 14 is how you put all of this together so that cities can create communities within the urban growth boundaries and we can preserve farm and forest lands on the outside UGBs. No one goal should be prioritized over another goal. They should all be balanced. But right now, many people feel that the system is no longer balanced. Goal 3 and goal 4, forest lands and agricultural lands, are a decision-making filter for everything we do, and we've lost track of the need for goal 9, which is economic development, goal 10, which is housing, goal 8, which is recreational needs. So that little mouse there hanging on the end, usually when we're talking about we don't want to expand the UGB too much because we don't want to absorb too much farmland, we give up public parks in our cities. That's the first thing to go, and that's been a big argument here in McMinnville over the last 33 years. And people need public parks. As we continue to densify and put people on smaller and smaller lots, those families need somewhere to go to play. And then goal 14 is urbanization and how we get through the process. So the intent is to protect farm and forest land from unregulated sprawl and the grasping wastrels of the land. That's a Tom McCall quote that's often used. It was never intended to be a zero-sum discussion. It was never intended to be cities, UGBs are not going to move. They're not going to expand. That was never the intention. The intention has always been urban growth boundaries can handle more population in a denser way and more thoughtful way than rural lands, so let's prevent sprawl by continuing to keep it in a compact nature. However, we have gone past that. Now it's the norm to fight all UGB amendments, especially here in the Willamette Valley. And I've gone to meetings where, in the last 3 years I've been here, where there's rallying cries of no more UGB amendments. We cannot allow any more UGB amendments to happen. Cities are spending millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars, on data and planning analysis to try and accommodate those 20 years of population growth assigned to them, only to find themselves in long, drawn-out court battles with little hope of success. So we're doing a study right now of UGB amendments for larger cities. The common thing we're seeing is cities are spending anywhere between $2 and $4 million on the effort, and it's taking them 8 to 10 years to get through it for a 20-year planning horizon. So before it's even approved, you're 10 years out. This is leaving cities with little or no developable land to grow on. And McMinnville is the poster child of this seesaw effort. Not my opinion, that's what I've been told by others. Before I came here, I was told, you're going to a community where McMinnville is the poster child of not being able to make growth work. So the results of our efforts. In 2000, we started doing a new analysis for 2003 to 2023 planning period. For that analysis, we concluded that we needed to expand our UGB by about 1,200 acres, gross acres we call it, which tends to be buildable acres as well, so we look at how many acres you can actually build on. So that was 890 buildable acres, of which 537 were meant to meet housing needs. We then got appealed and went into the court system. We sat in there for about 6 or 7 years, and we got about 217 acres of rural residential exception lands we were told we could bring into our urban growth boundary for housing needs. Rural residential exception lands mean those are lands that are already built out as rural subdivisions adjacent to the city. They're usually 1 and 2 acre lots. Sometimes there's a 5 acre lot and there, or a 10 acre lot, but they're built out. So we were told the city could not justify the selection of new high value farmland. We had asked for more land than that, obviously, and that's what we were able to bring in. Not 1 acre of that 217 acres is actually annexed into the city and developed. Not 1 new housing unit has been brought forth from that effort. We were left with a deficit of 673 acres, including 320 acres of residential land. And mind you, that's for population growth to 2023. We are in 2020 right now. And we spent $1 million on that effort. We have had 5 UGB amendments since 1981, since the first UGB was established, equating to 371 acres. One was for Joe Dancer Park, one was to expand the Evergreen Camp 2 or expand the Evergreen campus, one was for the new future high school, and then that rural exception land I talked about. In that same time, the population grew from 15,000 to 33,000, 34,000. This year, we just found out we're at 33,930 people. That's an increase of more than 120% in population growth, and our UGB has increased by 6%, and none of that has yielded new housing. So we've been able to absorb. A lot of people talk about you have to absorb, you need to go up, you need to be more dense, you need to make your streets smaller, you need to put more land into being able to be developed. McMinnville has done a great job of that. I know there's this counter story of we have a lot of large lot subdivisions, and we do, but we also have a lot of sort of planned development neighborhoods where there is density occurring. There's townhomes, there's apartment complexes. So density is occurring here in McMinnville. This map shows, I apologize because that's very different than the colors on my map for the projector. But this map shows the original intent for the UGB. So if you can see this lighter color here is what was originally submitted for the UGB, including these darker green areas. These darker green areas are what came in. So this is the high school site. This is rural residential land, rural residential land, rural residential land, and the Evergreen site. That's the UGB amendments. And the reason why this map's important is it shows this brown is exclusive farm use land, so that's all the farmland around McMinnville. And then anything that's not brown is county land that's already been developed. And by state law, we have to bring the county land that's already been developed into our community under the pretense that we're going to redevelop it and put more density on it. And none of that land is actually redeveloped. You can't see this very well, but it shows, I call this the ear over here. This is rural residential land on the east side of Riverside. It shows how small it is. We call that parcelization, but those are 1 and 2 acre lots with 2 5-acre lots and 3 10-acre lots in there. A total of 150 acres where we expect to put, per our analysis, 780 people. But if you go out to that neighborhood and you tell them we expect you to develop into 700 and house 780 people, they will tell you to leave. They are not interested. And the reason they're not interested is because they have a great living situation. They live on the edge of McMinnville. They access all the McMinnville amenities. They have 1 and 2 acre lots, and they pay 2/3 of taxes that you pay in the city of McMinnville. So I use this comparison. I brought up my house versus a house that was on the market for about 2 weeks. It sold very, very quickly because people realize what a great living situation that is. We have somewhat similar sized homes, lots. My lot's a 1/10 of their lot. And then our taxes, I pay twice as much. So why won't I go to something like that if I could? That's a great living situation, and so they're not interested in redeveloping that property. We are supposed to be, these are the numbers that the state told us. By 2041, we're supposed to accommodate 12,800 people. We think that's about 5,000 homes. Right here, this represents 5,000 homes. This is how many homes we need to bring into the community. This is how many homes we have land use decisions for. We have built, we're supposed to do that population growth, we are supposed to be building 200 to 250 new housing units per year. And we used to do that. So back in the early 2000s, we were building about 300 housing units per year. In the last 10 years, we have built 100 housing units per year, except for 2018 and 2019, and we estimate that we have a deficit of 1,000 housing units. What that means is our home builders are out of land, and we are starting to gentrify. So we're starting to see that happen. People are very upset when a developer buys a piece of property that has low improvement value, so it has manufactured homes on it or something like that, displaces those residents who are in their affordable housing and builds new housing on it. But that's essentially where we're at in terms of the market. And they are looking at all of those manufactured home parks right now. What it's done is it's created a need for affordable housing. Our median household income is about $55,000. Our median listed home price, this is as of yesterday, is $389,900. Our median price of homes sold is $338,500. Our average rent for an apartment is about $1,800. Those new homes going out at Baker Creek and Hill Road that many people are upset about, those are our most affordable homes in McMinnville, and they are selling for anywhere between $320,000 and $390,000. Those are meant to be first-time homeowners. I didn't spend that much on my first-time home, but that's what's happened here. This is a chart that shows median sales price from 2012 to 2018. The gold line, gold up there, wait, it's invisible. The invisible line, which runs right through here, is McMinnville. And you can see here at the end how we're starting to jump. We're going to trend this line out for 2 more years as we get the information, but we expect to jump even more because our average sales price for 2019 calendar year. So the previous numbers I gave you are existing numbers today. So we're in the down part of the calendar year for home sales in the wintertime. We don't buy as much. For the calendar year 2019, our average sales price was $398,000. This represents an average sales price home growth for McMinnville of 147% over that time period. So good for anybody who owned property before that. Not good if you're trying to buy something. This is what shows how much you can, if you earn this much money, how much buying power you have in McMinnville. If you look at this number, this is $365,000. So our average sales price is ending up on the far end of that number. That represents people who are making more than 120% of area median income. That's our average sales price right now. We do have households that make that, so about 41% of our households are in that demographic, and so we are serving them. But who we're not serving is anybody that makes less than that, and they're being displaced out of the market entirely, our lower and moderate income households. So this graph shows where we don't have supply, that's the higher end, where we do have supply. So builders are building the same thing they used to build that sold for a lot less, right? But they're selling it for a lot more. So these people are buying these homes, and then these people are buying these homes, and we're just, as you go down the channel, you're starting to displace. And the people who are most vulnerable right now are people on fixed incomes. So they are being displaced out of their housing at this point in time. So it's a matter, I often see comments about, well, why can't the builders sell it for less? We should be building affordable housing. You builder, why are you selling it for so much? But housing is a commodity. So they build it and they sell it at market values. That's what happens. And it's determined by supply and demand. So unaffordable housing is the result of artificial scarcity. We don't have enough supply for the demand. So if a city has 50 units on the market, and there are 100 families looking to move to that city, that means that supply can only accommodate 50% of that demand. Who are you going to build for? You're going to build for the people that you can make a bigger profit margin on. So the affluential are the ones who are able to access housing, and the ones, the 50% that are in that higher income bracket are not. And so that's why our housing supply is responding to that. This shows our building permits over the years. So up here you can see 350-ish, then here's 300 going across. So we're doing a good job with supply. And then this is the last couple of years. And now my PowerPoint won't move. Anybody know anything about technology? Oh, there we go. Whoever said that, thank you very much. Casey, you got my back. So where we're failing, this is a statewide issue as well. This is U.S. News and World Report. Oregon, they do rankings of cities. They have their best cities ranking. In 2018, we were ranked number 18 out of 50. We dropped in the last year to number 27. The reason why we dropped in the last year is because of housing affordability. We are ranked number 48 out of 50 states for housing affordability. That is disastrous. That's crazy. The state, Oregon Housing and Community Services came out with a statewide housing report saying, the irony of all this is it's called breaking new ground, and I'm like, we have no new ground to break, but that's great. But anyways, across Oregon, housing has emerged as a paramount concern. The statewide housing deficit is about 155,000 homes over the last 15 years. So I told you about ours. This is a statewide housing deficit. This is why they put $325 million out in this last biennium for housing, in addition to all the other funds they put into housing. Sprawl is starting to occur in the county. This is the very thing Oregon land use system is set up to prevent. And this is the irony for me coming here and looking at the statistics. So if you look at this, in McMinnville from 2000 to 2010, our growth was about 1.9% over that time period. Average annual growth rate is what AAGR stands for. And the unincorporated counties, so that's the lands not in cities, was 0.4%. In the time period from 2010 to 2015, that flipped on its head because we've run out of land. So in McMinnville, our growth rate was 0.5%, and the unincorporated county was 1.9%. We went in the opposite direction. That was so curious to me that I've been tracking this ever since then to try and figure this out and what do the numbers look like year to year. And there were some years where growth in the unincorporated county was nearly 3 times what was happening in McMinnville. As the largest city in the county, we are supposed to carry 30 to 40% of the population. It's not supposed to occur in the unincorporated areas. It's supposed to occur here. And this is the legal population growth. I've been talking to people who own property in the county, and I can't tell you how many. Are you going to close your ears?
Oh, no.
Commissioner?
It's important to hear the truth.
Okay. How many farm properties have illegal residences on them? to help supplement their income. Because the county's so large, we can't enforce that. So more growth is happening in the county. So the state has said to us we're supposed to grow at a rate of 1.4% so that we can maintain that scenario where we are absorbing 30 to 40% of the population growth in the county. That's not happening right now, and it's going to get worse. The other thing that's occurring is funding services. So cities are a business. To be able to provide public service, it costs money. With our property tax reforms in Oregon, your property tax on a home only goes up by 3%. And so anything in terms of property tax revenue funding services in a city, usually growth helps accommodate that. The cost of goods for the public services in our general fund hover around 6 to 7%. Most of it's personnel. So if you think of police and fire, that's mostly labor oriented. And so the cost of goods associated with that is 6 to 7%. Our property tax revenue is not keeping up with that, so we have a deficit. As we have a deficit, we have to look at either reducing levels of services or finding other means of revenue. Many cities who are not growing right now are going to additional levies. You hear cities talking about, I want to float out a public safety levy so I can cover the cost of public safety. That's happening around the state. I can tell you in McMinnville, from 2007 to 2018, the city's general fund operated in the red 6 out of the 10 fiscal years, and our total deficit was close to $2 million. Because we are so constrained with growth, we are not getting the property tax revenue. It's impactful in terms of public services. So we need to do something. As a planner, I was like, okay, we need to do something and understand this a little bit better. So we started looking at it. We looked at what's our housing needs, what's our buildable lands inventory, how are we going to find a solution for this. This is a map that shows all of our developable acres that are still left in the UGB. So anything that's not a color is not developable. Anything that's in that sort of orange-brown color has a land use decision on it and will accommodate the jelly beans in the top jar. And then all the other properties are meant to accommodate the jelly beans in the bottom jar. And so we are looking at those for capacity and what does it look like. And just to sort of show how the Oregon land use system works, is this section A, which is the West Hills of McMinnville. That is intended to yield about 1,200 dwelling units. However, 763 of those dwelling units are what we call Zone 2, which is a water zone, and we don't have water in that zone. So we have no water in that zone, we can't build homes there. We have to build the water infrastructure. We don't have any funding plans for building the water infrastructure. We don't have a capital improvement program for it. We don't have an SDC to collect funds for it. And so it's meant to be built by the developer. So Howard Astor has a development approved out there. He has 297 homes in Zone 2. The cost of the water infrastructure is about $8 million, so that would be $27,000 per home in terms of just being able to put water to that site. And that will be absorbed by the homeowner. That's not feasible. We also in that area have landslide susceptibility. So a lot of that land is in high hazard landslide susceptibility. We're looking at that right now as to whether that makes sense to actually develop on that. And we're having those questions. Right up here is UGB lands, rural residential lands that have come in. And I always talk about in McMinnville, I hear from people who live on those rural residential lands and like how they live. Over my dead body will this come into the city and be redeveloped. I hear that all the time. So we now call it the over my dead body zones. And I feel like coming from the East Coast, we're kind of in that obituary watch group, right? So, you know, New York, you watch the obituaries, someone passes, okay, let's go get a rent control unit. We're kind of looking at that. That's our 20-year buildable land supply. In terms of the B area, that's that ear on the eastern side of Riverside Drive. We are meant to have 780 homes there. The largest lot is 10 acres. Most of them are 1 and 2s. And they are not interested. I can tell you that. We've been out there. In fact, they don't want anything developing next to them. They've worked very hard to prevent growth from happening in that area. So I could go through all of these. I'm going to watch time, but they all have problems with that. So I feel like we're playing Monopoly in terms of let's pretend we can build here and put some plastic homes on it. But the reality is it's not going to build anytime soon. It's not solving our problem. So as a planning director, if you ask me how are we going to solve the problem and actualize housing units, I don't think this system for McMinnville is working. Because we're going to pretend that that's going to get us 5,000 new homes for our 12,800 people that we have to serve. The other thing we have to do in all this is we need to protect the small town charm. We have heard that, we know that, and we understand that. And the aesthetic of McMinnville, it's a very special place and people do not want to lose that. So we need to protect the small town charm and the aesthetics and try to accommodate this growth, and really are struggling with any sort of land supply growth plans. So it's hard to do. So we have some things in front of us that we have to make some decisions about. We can hope, I had pretend in there originally, but again I took my counterpoint language down, so we can hope that the system actually works, put together the best plan that we can under the regulations that will actualize results. I'm not interested in putting land into the UGB that's not going to build any housing units, because that was sitting there forever as 20-year buildable land supply, and pray that it's not appealed. When it's appealed, it sits in the system for a long time, and I haven't found a city that has successfully made it through an appeal process with its same plan intact. That's going to cost about $1 million to do. It will take about 5 to 10 years to actualize a result there. We can pursue a legislative fix. Most people have told us to pursue this, to be quite frank with you, from state agencies, from DLCD staff actually behind the scenes, from advocates, and from locals. You're not going to make it work within the system. The only way you're going to make it work is go to the legislature and just say, please, we need some land. Can you make this work for us and pass a bill? We think that will take about $500,000, a lot of lobbying efforts, and maybe 5 years. But it will also, because McMinnville's a poster child and everybody's watching it, it's also going to be, it's going to illuminate the fact that the system's not working, and it could bring out a whole, other can of worms of dialogue. Or we can do nothing. We can say, hey, state, you told us to plan for this growth, but quite frankly, we don't want to grow, and we don't want to plan for growth, and we don't want to invest the money in it. We don't think it works, it's not worth the money, we'll put the money somewhere else. But to do that, we have to accept the fact that McMinnville will gentrify. It's happening now, and it will continue. Ashland made this policy decision. Ashland's median home price right now is $474,000. Their school system is contracting, so they're struggling with being able to support it, and they've displaced lower and moderate income households from Ashland. So you need to understand that that's the consequence of the choice, right? And then they're also, because of that funding level of service, we'd probably be looking at additional levies to keep our existing level of service moving forward. So if you look at Ashland again, they have a series of additional levies that they've put in place to be able to fund their services. So our challenges with our current system is how do we maintain the small town charm while at the same time pushing a high density product? So, how to bring more supply, and if we still want affordable housing, we need supply. That's density at this point in time because we don't have land. And this town is really resistant to density. I will tell you that right now. There are some people, usually they live in the county, who are saying, you need more density, you need to build up. But at the planning commission level and the public hearing level, we have people coming in and testifying in tears, literally in tears, so fearful of what density means for their quality of life in terms of where they live and what they're enjoying today. So it's hard, it's a very hard discussion. We're looking at mostly infill, that's very hard development to do, very expensive, and that's not going to yield much affordable housing. And with all the data and investment, we need to put plans in place, which will take money and time. We have done some work. We're calling it Growing McMinnville Mindfully. We've been out talking to the community. Mindfully is important to us because we think it should be thoughtful and intentional, and we want that this community makes its own decisions. It is a local decision-making process. We've been trying to share what it means in terms of our growth chart and how we need to grow, what that means in terms of the types of homes we need. So if we wanted to maintain McMinnville like it is today with the mix of people we have today, we are looking at 40% of our homes being subsidized, about 20% being workforce housing, so lower end, and another 40% being higher end housing. We're asking people what they love about McMinnville and what are their ideas for a future McMinnville, and I have some boards here showing what people are coming up with. We're asking people to vote on whether they want to go up in terms of accommodating growth, so don't expand the UGB, go into higher density housing, go out, so expand UGB to maintain the existing aesthetic of McMinnville, or a little bit of both, so go up and go out. And we're getting votes. That board actually represents pretty well where the votes are landing. There's minimal support for just go up, and it's really sort of straddling out and both. These are out and about in the community, and they'll remain out and about in the community for the next couple of months. We're going to start putting them in the library. We just had them at the community center. And we're reading the results. We're trying to take this all in. So we're doing the planning. We have a housing strategy we put together. It is based on density, and it's based on flexibility. We have great neighborhood principles that we put together, which is based on diverse households. So it's looking at the whole discussion of single-family zoning, no longer being single-family zoning, allowing duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes in single-family residential neighborhoods. We're looking at the city center to see how we can bring more density into the city center. We are looking at if we have to, I feel if McMinnville we may be able to solve the not in my neighborhood do I want higher density discussion that's occurring here by talking about aesthetics, because I really feel people are focused on what it looks like in their property value in the neighborhood. And so if there's a way to do design standards and development standards so it doesn't look like some rectangular box that's really cheaply made as higher density housing, but is aesthetically pleased, you don't even know it's not a single family residential home, that people may be more amicable to it and accepting of it. And then we're right there, embracing House Bill 2001. That's the bill you heard that went through the state to bring missing middle housing to play. We were part of it at the beginning. We helped inform the bill, change some tenets of it, and then I'm participating on the rulemaking committee as to how that bill will move forward. I will tell you this right now, though. If you don't have land to build on, you're not going to get missing middle housing. It will not happen. Infill, even the bill says only expect 3% of redevelopment of missing middle housing on infill projects. It's really based on larger master plan projects. And none of this means anything if we don't have land to build upon. We can put all the best planning in place, but if there's no land, nothing's going to happen. The other thing that's happening in McMinnville is we're surrounded by high-value farmland. So anything that's not the 6 primary colors would be not high-value farmland. And the map doesn't show up very well right there, but I can tell you there are no other colors than those 6 surrounding McMinnville right now. So that's why it's been such a struggle here. We also have a lot of county development land. So the county's been really generous to us by allowing all this development to occur on our edges that we need to bring into the city and pretend that that can redevelop it. So we have a lot of that we have to look at as well. That's problematic. So putting this all in perspective, Oregon has, let's pretend it's 63 million acres of land. So in the state, we have 63 million acres. Of that, there's a lot of numbers that float out here on this, but this is what's the actuals. Of that, 850,000 acres are in a UGB. That represents 1.3% of the total state land. And that is housing a majority of the state population. That's what we want to happen, but if we don't allow it to continue to occur, we're going to see something else happen. And we don't have much land in UGBs today. There's always this fear that we're going to run out of land, but 1.3% is what is absorbed in UGBs today. Since 1973, when this system was put together, cities have added 81,660 acres of land to their UGBs. That's a 1% growth. So for 40, 50 years now, cities have added 1% of land supply to their UGBs to accommodate 50 years of state of Oregon population growth. Cities have done a great job of bringing that in, but they are running out of ways to do that. Yamhill County has 458,000 acres of land. Of that, 7,500 acres are in McMinnville's UGBs, or about 1.6% of the total county land. Since 1973, cities in Yamhill County have added 847 acres of land to their UGBs. That's 0.2% growth. This is the epicenter for the battle, more or less. So cities are not expanding in Yamhill County. Since 2008, 19,920 acres were amended into UGBs statewide. In Yamhill County, 167 acres have been amended into UGBs since 2008. That represents about 0.8% of the total statewide acreage. Amendments are not occurring here. They are all appealed into the court system. If McMinnville expanded its UGB, so putting this in perspective, because we are, I think this is the ideology, where we're in our selective ideology, and we're like, no, we can't do anything, that we are losing perspective of how do we plan for future generations. If McMinnville expanded its UGB by 1,200 acres, and that's a random number, we don't have a number, to accommodate the growth of 12,800 people, that would be 0.3% of Yamhill County's overall acreage. 0.3%, and a 0.002% of statewide acreage. That's to accommodate 20 years of population growth. If we took it to exclusive farm use acreage, so Yamhill County has 192,000 exclusive farm use acres. If the city expanded by 1,200 acres into only EFU lands, let's say we said, we're not doing any exception land, and by some miracle we get through a system and it's all EFU land, the city, meaning that you're developing on greenfield development and it's easier to develop, the city would be absorbing 0.6% of Yamhill County's EFU land, 0.6% to accommodate 20 years of population growth, 30 to 40% of this county's population growth over the next 20 years. So this is what we've spent thousands of hours, $1 million in McMinnville, I don't know what Newburgh has spent on theirs, and 33 years debating back and forth. And it's contributing to housing inaffordability here, it's contributing to gentrification here, and it's contributing to increased homelessness in McMinnville. People are losing their homes, they're being displaced out. So our next steps. I thought I could come here, I've done a lot of planning in Oregon, I've been fairly successful in my other communities. I said, okay, this is a challenge, I like challenges, that's why I chose to come here. And I wanted to help this community solve this problem. I don't have a solution after going through all of this. So we're going to the city council and we're saying, here's all the issues and give us direction and tell us what you want us to do. Because I don't know if the current system will work for McMinnville. So on January 22nd, we're having a work session with City Council. It's planned for about 2 hours. We're going to lay everything out to them. And they need to they're going to make a decision, give us direction on whether or not to move forward with continued analysis and efforts, or do we still invest in this growth planning and try to do a UGB amendment, or do we make the choice of no choice and just recognize that we'll gentrify and we're no longer chasing affordable housing, and that's not going to be something we'll be able to solve in McMinnville. We're going to do that with a decision-making filter. We're going to bring them information all about actualizing results. We can't be pretending that land that's not going to develop is going to develop. That doesn't solve the problem. And a return on investment. We have spent $1 million on this thus far, and it didn't yield anything. So at what point in time do you say, I've spent too much? And there are cities who are choosing not to spend anymore. They feel the system's broken, and they're like, I'm not spending any money on this until the system is fixed. And they've made those conscientious choices. So that's planning McMinnville's future. We have 5 minutes, I think, for questions and answers. I apologize for taking too long.
I was just wondering, the legislative decision about single-family residences and its exclusivity being changed, what percentage of that growth need would be at least theoretically accommodated by that? My second question is Newburgh constrained by these same difficulties?
So I don't know enough about Newburgh. I know they have more housing land than we do right now that's developable land. They're struggling with industrial land, but they have the same issues. They've tried to do UGB amendments and they've been held up in the court system by appeal. In terms of your first question, the bill itself has written into it, because the fear was that I call them no growth advocates, really they are don't grow the UGB, the people who are appealing UGB amendments. The fear was that they would say to cities, you need to pretend all your population growth is going to come from this, which would continue the exasperation on the housing affordability in Oregon. We have a crisis, we need to solve our crisis, right? So the bill itself has written into it, you can't assume more than 3% of your population growth will be solved by House Bill 2001 on existing built neighborhoods. It has to be on new land, that's where it's going to happen.
Is that a realistic assumption?
It's based on studies that happen. So if you've heard about the Portland residential infill project that's been underway for several years, some people call it the Rest in Peace project. So again, people who feel it's working or not working, it's based on studies from that. Are there any other questions?
What's the process to make decisions moving forward? What are the steps?
That's a great question. So first we're going to go to City Council and work session. The work session isn't a time for, I don't think they're going to take public comment at that. It's really a time to sort of inform them. And then I'm going to ask them for a date where they will take action and give us direction. So City Council first has to say, let's continue down the path and continue to do a UGB amendment if we want to do that. We know we need that. We've done the analysis. We know to accommodate population and employment, we need a UGB amendment. If they want to continue down that path, they'll give us direction and we'll fund it and put the time into it. Or if they want to go down another path, they'll let us know that.
But who makes the decision to act?
City Council. So City Council, so in terms of process, this may answer your question. As a city, the City Council will eventually adopt a plan of some sort. We send it to the state, they review it and say yes or no. And then after they say yes or no, people can appeal it. That's typically when the appeals happen.
I don't, the system's broken, and to do more of the same is insanity, we've been told. But if somehow we got a bunch of new housing, we'd have to move people around, and our existing roads aren't adequate. So is there, not necessarily in your purview, but is there any thought to making the roads accommodate more cars?
Yeah, so there's two answers to that. By state law, when we talk about growth planning, we have to look at transportation planning. So we would put together a transportation system plan that would not only look at roads for new development and if it went on newer lands, but also how it impacts the existing system as they all come onto the system. So we would have to do that and look at that, and that's part of our analysis. I will tell you, though, if the decision is to go to higher density in a community, which we're being told to do, so you have to, as a city, look at higher density when you do this 20-year growth planning. We can only plan our infrastructure for the 20 years of growth. So here's the other part of the system that doesn't work. It's a catch-22. As a planner, if I'm just doing a 20-year urban growth boundary, I'm planning transportation, water, and wastewater for that 20 years. So that's planned for the planning horizon. Let's pretend 1980 to 2000. Then I'm told by the state when I'm doing the next 20 years, 2000 to 2020, you need to put more people in your existing city environment. You need to go denser. So then I need to figure out how that infrastructure, the pipes we put in the ground, the roads that we built to serve that first 20 years, is now going to serve another 20 years of population growth. And we have capacity issues. That's where the transportation issues are coming up. We can change out pipes and make them bigger. It's expensive, but we can do it. But roads, making roads bigger when you have a built environment around it is very difficult. And so then you end up with congestion and intersection issues and things like that. That is a catch-22 in the land use system that they're actually studying right now. I just interviewed with somebody last week about this very issue. They're going to start looking at it. Because transportation planning does not allow us to plan beyond 20 years of growth, and then we're asked to put more growth on that system, and it's counterintuitive. We need to get people out of cars, though. I think in McMinnville, so if the city council said, we're not going to spend $1 million on population growth, and I don't know what they're going to say, so I don't want anybody to think that I have an idea about that, but if they say that, and then they're like, but we still need to do planning. I'm like, yes, there's still lots of great planning that we could do in McMinnville. And one of the things I would suggest we do is really look at bicycle and pedestrian planning so that we can create networks amongst the neighborhoods and get people out of their cars so they can walk and bike to different places. I think we can do that here very easily and do special district planning as well.
I don't envy the task that the planning staff has inherited, but I do want to commend the extremely comprehensive information that you've shared today and all the work that you guys have put into it. It really shows, and I think that's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, big kudos. One of my questions, as we're planning mindfully for the future of McMinnville, is all of us here today at these kind of afternoon meetings or going to city council meetings, it's a privilege for us to have the ability to have the time and financial means to be here today. One of my questions is how, as we're doing this visioning process and asking these mindful questions, what measures can we take to make sure that the very people that are being potentially disenfranchised or displaced still have a voice if they're maybe not able to participate?
Yeah, that's a great question, and if anybody has a great answer, I'd love to hear it. We want to do that, right? So part of the cost of this process is citizen engagement. That is a goal, right? And, you know, typically we're talking to this, I always say we're talking to the same 400 people in McMinnville wherever I go, and there are, you know, 33,500 other people who live here and are impacted by our decisions, so how do we get out to them? So one of our investments will be, one, dissecting the information in a way that someone can understand, right? So land use planning for dummies, so to speak. And also that it's engaging enough that someone wants to take the time, 2-3 minutes even, to figure it out and their decisions. And then how to get the information out to the people we're not getting it to. So going to the community center, we actually got, I encourage you to get up here and read this. This is coming from the community center. Those are groups of people that we don't normally see in these venues or at city council. And so they're engaging. We're going to go to the library next. I'm going to try, if somebody owns a coffee shop and would allow me to put stuff in there, I would love to do that. Wherever we can get the information out, we want to do that. And over the next year, if we continue to move forward, we'll have a series every 2 months of asking different questions and getting more information out so that it's digestible and people can, you know, travel the journey with us in terms of the decision-making milestones. I wanted to follow up on your first comment, though, because I forgot to say this. The planning staff here that worked on this for the last 33 years did a great job. I have said to people, my heart hurts for McMinnville that we didn't move those plans forward, and I truly mean that as a planner, because the plans they put in place for the last UGB amendment for this community were remarkable. They were progressive, they were brought higher density housing to this community in a way that it would make sense and work for everybody, and it didn't move forward. And that's tragic, truly. If I could take it off the shelf and move it forward, I would do that. They did a great job. So,
well, again, appreciate everything you guys do.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Done? Thank you.
I know everybody needs to get back to their day, but Heather, thank you. Thank you for taking the time from your schedule to have that very candid, transparent conversation with us. Really very much appreciate it. I'm giving you wine. I think you need tequila too, but wine for now. You all have a wonderful day. Obviously, if you'd like to watch this, you can do it on MCM. And we will see you next month, folks. Thank you very much for your time today.